This narrative seems like a segment from a horror film, yet it is a portion of an actual incident that occurred in the Philippines on December 10th, 2021. When three masked intruders forced their way into the family residence, 17-year-old Janice found herself concealed beneath her bed. The invaders searched each room, and the girl managed to hide under the bed. Uncertain of when her bedroom door would swing open, she remained silent, utterly still. Unable to make an emergency call for fear the conversation might be overheard, Janice, with shaky hands, began to send a message in the family group chat, hoping her parents, who were at work, would see it. At home with her siblings, she could hear their cries. It was 2:48 p.m. Frozen with fear, she didn't dare to move, while her distress signal remained unseen by her parents. Unsure of what other action to take or who else could help, at 3 p.m., she took to a social media platform, posting that intruders had entered the home. She was hiding under the bed, and she feared for her life. Then, the sound of footsteps nearing her door left her wondering if it was the assailants or perhaps assistance had finally arrived. Upon his return, Janice's father was met with the harrowing reality that 2 of his 3 children had not survived. This peculiar incident drew comparisons to a particularly notorious Hollywood horror film, where the unfolding events seem predictable at first, yet the outcome proves to be far more dreadful than one could have ever imagined. The dawn of December 10th, 2021, marked a day of unforgettable significance for the Maguad family. For the first time, Janice referred to her adoptive parents as Mom and Dad, a milestone moment for any parent who has welcomed a child into their lives. This act signified that Mr. and Mrs. Maguad had truly gained their daughter's trust, filling them with immense joy and sending them off to their jobs, feeling uplifted. While Cruz was teaching, a colleague discreetly informed him through his classroom door that his family's residence had been assaulted, urging him, as the family's patriarch, to hurry home immediately. Overwhelmed with panic, Cruz hurriedly left the classroom and sped to his vehicle. The drive from the school to his residence took approximately 15 minutes. Cruz was acutely aware that his 3 children were at home, potentially in danger. In his rush, he left behind his keys and found the front door locked upon arrival. He attempted to open it, shaking the handle and pushing against the door to no avail. Panic escalating, he loudly called out for his children, but was met with unsettling silence. Circling the house, Cruz's alarm intensified upon discovering a blood-stained blanket and a knife missing its handle by the door. He hurried to the back door, continuing to call for his children, yet the silence remained unbroken. Fortunately, he found the back door unlocked. Cruz paused, deliberating on how best to safeguard his son and daughters. With a brief moment of hesitation, he stepped inside, hoping to catch any intruders off guard and protect his children if they were being held captive. Moving quietly through the kitchen and into the living room, Cruz was confronted with a scene that instantaneously shattered his world. The entire lounge area was drenched in blood, with pieces of glass from shattered vases and items drenched in blood, including pots and baseball bats. At the heart of the chaos were the lifeless bodies of 2 of his 3 children, no longer alive. The perpetrator of this act was undoubtedly disturbed, unhinged, and furious. The extent of the injuries was horrific, with one of the victims missing an ear, which had been severed. One daughter survived by hiding under the bed during the assault, listening to every sound from beneath. What was meant to be one of the happiest days of Cruz Maguad's life morphed into an absolute horror. The moment he shut his eyes, the images of his son and daughter sprawled in the lounge haunted him. The Maguad household was made up of 4 individuals: the parents, Cruz and Lavella, along with their 2 adolescent children, 16-year-old Louis and 18-year-old Gwen. On a certain day, the siblings gathered their parents in the lounge to discuss the importance of welcoming a 5th member to their family. They proposed the inclusion of Gwen's 17-year-old friend, Janice. As an orphan, who had bounced from one home to another, serving as a live-in maid without any prospects for education, Janice had been thrust into adulthood at merely 8 years old. The siblings convinced their parents to allow Janice to join their household, promising to undertake household chores in exchange for a sense of security and affection. Raised by Cruz and Lavella to extend a helping hand to those in dire straits, the couple deliberated and chose to offer Janice a shot at a stable life. In the Philippines, the absence of adequate resources or a support network for a young woman could tragically lead her to homelessness. The Maguads, deeply devout, believed that their capacity to assist someone else was a divine opportunity afforded by God's blessings on their family. Consequently, Janice was warmly welcomed into the family fold through formal adoption, with all legal formalities duly completed. Mr. Maguad was employed as an elementary school teacher and was well respected, garnering accolades from his peers. His wife, Lavella, held the position of principal at the same school, meaning their income was modest. Yet within their community, they were deemed affluent due to owning land and being able to financially provide for their offspring. Louis Maguad, the family's youngest, stood out for his magnetism. Though serene in demeanor, he possessed a boundless vitality. Encounters with him often led individuals to divulge their innermost sentiments, as Louis exuded a warmth and empathy that encouraged openness. He was non-judgmental, intellectually curious, and artistic, engaging in guitar playing, reading, sketching, and harboring aspirations of pursuing a legal education post-high school. Gwen, his elder sister, was notably industrious and vivacious. Since her early years, she had advanced through every rank of the scouting movement, amassing a collection of badges for her accomplishments. In her senior school years, Gwen took pre-medical classes at a nearby university, aiming for a career in medicine. She devoted her leisure to volunteer work, always ready to lend a hand to those in distress. It was at a mutual friends gathering that Gwen encountered Janice, who was employed as a nanny. While the festivities unfolded, Janice was preoccupied with childcare duties. Gwen was taken aback to learn that her contemporary was already engaged in work. As their friendship deepened, Gwen inquired about Janice's path to nannying, uncovering that Janice had been forsaken by her parents, left aboard a cargo vessel and discovered by a benevolent stranger. This kind soul attempted to locate Janice's family using social media and the internet by posting her details and photograph, yet no one claimed her. Consequently, Janice was entrusted to the care of the Philippine Social Services. Her earliest vivid memory was of feeling lost on a vast ship, yearning for a childhood unburdened by worries and longing for a mother's comfort after a minor fall. Janice aspired for academic success to facilitate college attendance, but her circumstances necessitated work over study. Gwen and Janice's bond strengthened as they spent time together, experimenting with makeup, hairstyles, conducting photo shoots, and creating TikTok content. Amid attempts to capture a dance routine they choreographed, Louis, the spirited younger brother, would often jest from behind the camera, eliciting laughter. Their camaraderie was filled with joy, leading the Maguad siblings to propose to their parents the idea of integrating Janice into their tightly knit family circle. Gwen and Louis's parents were notably disciplined. They refrained from indulging their offspring with lavish gifts and did not permit them unlimited freedom. Responsibilities were assigned to each member of the household. It was expected that all would contribute to housework. The children had to excel academically, participate in church services on Sundays, and support one another. Nevertheless, Gwen and Louis deeply admired their parents for their nurturing approach. The decision to adopt Janice underscored the tight-knit nature of the Maguad family. Subsequently, Janice took over Louis's room, while he relocated to the living room sofa. Upon Janice's integration into the household, she was embraced as a full-fledged family member. The Maguads ensured her security. She was promptly registered for school, liberating her from the need to earn her own living. For the first time, she was able to embrace her youth and indulge in envisioning her future. The adoption brought the siblings closer. They persisted in their photography sessions, went on family vacations, savored their time off, and returned re-energized. Yet this does not imply that the transition was seamless or without its challenges. Many adoptive parents can attest to the difficulties faced when integrating a new child into the family. The child must adapt to unfamiliar surroundings, assimilate new guidelines, and build trust, a process that demands time. The Maguads benefited from Cruz and Lavella's educational insights, enduring patience, and their willingness to empathize with and comprehend their children's perspectives. The initial occurrence transpired a few months post Janice's incorporation into the Maguad household, which boasted a modest farm for pig rearing. Following the sale of a piglet, Cruz had a surplus of $200, which he stashed in a container in the living area for unforeseen expenditures. That month, an urgent need for medical care arose when Cruz's aging parents were hospitalized. But upon checking the container, Cruz discovered it was starkly empty. Each member of the household adamantly denied accessing the funds. Although not financially affluent, the Maguads were not excessively wealthy either, prompting a thorough search throughout their home for the vanished funds. The search extended for hours until one of the siblings uncovered a hidden compartment within Janice's backpack. Overwhelmed, Janice admitted her actions, having concealed the $200 inside a secret pouch she crafted in the bag. She struggled to articulate her reasons and broke down in tears. Cruz, far from furious, was simply baffled. Janice feared their wrath and anticipated expulsion for betraying their trust. The Maguads recognized that Janice's upbringing was vastly different from that of Gwen and Louis, having spent much of her life fending for herself. They were aware that such incidents of theft are not uncommon within households, particularly during the initial stages of integrating children from orphanages. This behavior often stems from a survival instinct, hoarding resources against future uncertainties, in fear of potential abandonment and returning to a state of need. Certainly, the Maguad family felt let down, yet they didn't regard the incident as critically grave. It paralleled the instances when their own child erred. Now that Janice was their child, abandoning her was out of the question. They endeavored to comfort her, emphasizing that she no longer had to fret about her future, as she was an integral part of their household. Following this disheartening event, the familial bonds strengthened, becoming more cohesive. With the shift to online education, Gwen took it upon herself to assist Janice with her studies. On December 10, 2021, as the parents were preparing to depart for work, Janice addressed them as Mom and Dad for the initial time, marking what should have been a momentous occasion. However, a significant revelation emerged. Janice, their adoptive child, was not an orphan as believed. She had been actively engaging with her biological mother through social media platforms. On December 10, 2021, discovering his two offspring motionless at the center of the living room, Cruz knelt beside them, attempting to detect a heartbeat, but found none. Overwhelmed with despair, he appealed to the heavens, pondering why both were taken from him. Then, realizing he must look for his third child, he composed himself and proceeded upstairs. He advanced, hoping not to encounter another lifeless figure. Calling out for Janice, he was met with the sound of a door creaking open. He hurried into the room and began to urgently check her body for injuries, ensuring she was safe. The child was intact, yet inexplicably she was soaked. For an instant, Cruz was seized by fear, mistaking the liquid for blood. Janice, panting heavily, recounted to her father that 3 individuals had broken into their home, assaulting Gwen and Louis. She had managed to flee to her room and conceal herself under the bed. She was petrified by the screams that echoed below, feeling helpless about aiding her siblings until silence ensued. In her state of panic, she opted for a bath, a peculiar choice given the recent violence. The act of bathing, especially under such dire circumstances, was unconventional. Cruz struggled to grasp Janice's behavior but endeavored to offer solace. He aimed to remain resilient, though internally he felt as though everything was scorched. Mrs. Maguad arrived promptly after the law enforcement, finding Janice, drenched in both water and tears, on the veranda. She embraced the girl, expressing gratitude to the divine for her safety, inquired about Gwen and Louis's whereabouts. It fell upon Cruz to break the harrowing news to Lavella that 2 of their children were victims of the assault. Mrs. Maguad, the head of an elementary school, was typically poised and decisive, even in emergencies, yet now she found herself shattered. She was devoid of answers, strategies, or even the faintest clue on how to proceed. They clung to each other in tears, as their residence was sealed off with tape, marking it as a crime scene. The police uncovered an array of evidence within the living room, featuring various items that might have served as weapons in the crime. A blood-stained baseball bat, a hammer, numerous kitchen knives, one of which was discovered near the entrance, pots, and shattered glass bottles. The authorities were tasked with gathering and documenting all pieces of evidence, to then correlate them with the injuries found on the bodies of the Maguad siblings. Gwen bore multiple stab wounds across her face, chest, and abdomen. A blow to the face often suggests deeply personal motives, such as envy. The sheer savagery of these incidents is incomprehensible. Defensive injuries were evident on her hands and wrists, showing Gwen resisted fiercely to the very end. Her hair was caked with coagulated blood, and she was missing an ear. Upon examining Louis, the coroner identified 51 stab wounds. This level of violence transcended the mere act of taking a life, indicating a profound personal vendetta. The extent of mutilation on the teenagers' bodies was such that mortuary staff had to sew up the wounds before the parents could proceed with funeral arrangements. The initial version was based on the testimonies of investigators, concluding that the criminals targeted one of the wealthier families in the area. They did not anticipate anyone being home, but when detectives noted the presence of valuable items like a TV, phone, and laptop in plain sight, they changed their opinion and dismissed the burglary theory. The second theory involved family disputes over land, with Lavella having siblings who claimed the land. Despite rumors of disputes over this land, investigators found nothing to support this theory and had to abandon it as well. The community and family sought answers as local residents feared for their safety, given that even teenagers were not spared by the criminals. The entire investigative unit focused on this crime, with the mayor offering a $5,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of the attackers. Meanwhile, detectives decided to search the house and surrounding area again, expanding their search area. It was then they stumbled upon a vegetative stream near the Maguado house, essentially a small pond. They were incredibly lucky to find a small plastic bag caught on a branch in the stream containing blood-stained clothing, likely worn by the criminal after committing the act. Following this discovery in the pond, the police re-examined the Maguado house for clues, searching for anything remotely suspicious. Meanwhile, online users conducted their mini-investigation, unsatisfied with either the burglary or land dispute theories. They concluded, albeit unconfirmed, that the crime was committed by someone who survived. Such statements often hurt those who have already suffered greatly, but in this case, the online users had their evidence. First, regarding the unusual choice to bathe amidst such a crisis, Janice's decision to take a bath after hiding from the assailants, instead of checking on her siblings or alerting someone as the disturbance ceased, raised eyebrows. Online sleuths theorized that Janice's bath was an attempt to cleanse herself of her siblings' blood after harming them. Cruz Maguad, once the immediate shock of his loss diminished, also acknowledged the peculiarity of her actions. Initially, his overwhelming relief at finding his adopted daughter unharmed overshadowed any scrutiny of her behavior. Another puzzling aspect was Janice's silence during Cruz's frantic calls for his children. Given the modest size of their home, it seemed improbable that she wouldn't hear his cries. She only revealed herself after Cruz discovered the bodies of Gwen and Louis, adding to the suspicion. Additionally, the claim that the attackers invaded her room without noticing her, despite a thorough search, suggested either a lack of thoroughness by the intruders or a discrepancy in Janice's story. Forensic analysis found blood droplets in her room, which she attributed to the perpetrators who allegedly murdered her siblings. The timing of Janice's plea for help further complicated the narrative. She messaged her family group at 2:48 p.m., although autopsies indicated the Maguad siblings died around 2 p.m. This delay in seeking help, almost 50 minutes after the cessation of their screams, along with a social media plea filled with emojis, struck many as incongruent with someone in a state of panic. Her decision to alter her surname on social media shortly after posting for help was also deemed ill-timed. Concurrently, law enforcement discovered blood spots in areas of the residence where, according to the young woman's account, they were unexpected, like the laundry area. Despite the absence of any struggle indicators, the presence of blood spots on the sink and floor invoked further inquiries. Once the evidence gathering concluded, the Maguad family received permission to re-enter their dwelling for cleaning. Amid this period, Lavella was utterly devastated. As detectives proceeded with their scrutiny, she grieved profoundly for her lost offspring. As her sorrow momentarily subsided, she found herself simply curling up, lying in wait for the grief and the sharp sting of loss to overwhelm her anew. Seeking a diversion, Lavella began tidying the home, initiating with Janice's chamber. During this task, she encountered an ID card unfamiliar to her within their home, swiftly delivering it to the authorities. The ID was that of a 17-year-old male, known primarily by the moniker Marlon, whose actual name was withheld. Lavella had no acquaintance with Marlon, nor had she ever encountered him. Yet neighbors witnessed the youth en route to the Maguad residence on the day in question. A shopkeeper also recognized him, providing directions to Cruz and Lavella's abode. Additionally, a motorcyclist reported transporting Marlon to the location on the day the tragedy struck the teenagers. This discovery marked a significant breakthrough in the investigation, prompting the question of how Marlon's ID found its way into Janice's quarters. Summoned for interrogation, the officials hardly anticipated the girl could elucidate the presence of the ID in her room. However, Janice composedly acknowledged knowing the boy, subsequently breaking down to admit her involvement in her sibling's tragic end. Janice's confession remained undisclosed to the public due to her minor status, leaving the extent of her involvement in the tragic event somewhat ambiguous. It is known that Marlon, who worked at a church maintaining the premises for services, had some form of association with Janice, although the nature of their relationship and how they came into contact were not detailed in media reports. On her social media, a photo with a different young man was discovered, prompting police investigation. This individual, believed to be her boyfriend, had noticed Janice's plea for help online and attempted to contact her that day. When he called, the call was picked up but met with silence, leading him to eventually disconnect, assuming Janice might have exaggerated the situation. The investigation took a turn when Marlon was located by the police. His denial of involvement became untenable after Gwen's phone was discovered in his possession. Compounding his predicament, he had also been recently apprehended for possessing illegal substances. When the Maguad family took Janice in, they believed they were giving an orphan a chance at a new life, unaware that her biological parents were still alive. She maintained contact with her mother, Michelle, and Juanita on social media, revealing a more complex background than initially thought. Janice's early life was marked by significant hardship, with her family struggling to provide basic necessities, such as food, leading to a diet primarily consisting of sweet potatoes. Her father's frequent alcohol consumption due to financial strains added to the family's difficulties. The circumstances of how Janice became separated from her family remain unclear, whether she was abandoned or simply got lost, but she was indeed found alone on a cargo ship on September 22, 2013. The Maguads offered Janice a semblance of the loving family environment she had never experienced. Witnessing the care and protection Gwen and Louis received from their parents, juxtaposed with her own traumatic upbringing, stirred a mix of emotions in Janice. Despite being adopted, she was treated with the same affection as the Maguad's biological children and was expected to contribute to household duties equally. However, Janice struggled with the family's expectations and the shared affection and responsibilities, longing for undivided attention and the full extent of what the Maguads could provide. Her desire to enjoy the privileges of being the sole child in the household led to a conflicted relationship with the reality of her situation, where love and material benefits were not exclusively hers to claim. On the fateful morning of December 10th, the day that would end in tragedy, Janice notably addressed her adoptive parents as mom and dad for the first time, signaling her belief that her ultimate aim was within reach. Janice was aware she could never surpass Gwen and Louis in the eyes of the Maguads due to their biological connection, and saw elimination as the only solution to this perceived inequality. Subsequent investigations revealed text messages in Tagalog on Janice's phone, suspected to be exchanges with Marlon, which unveiled her grim intentions. In these messages, she expressed a desire to end the lives of 7 individuals without naming them, and held a belief in divine forgiveness for her actions if she were to repent. 6 days post the attack, on December 16th, authorities detained both Janice and Marlon, treating them as juvenile offenders rather than placing them in a conventional prison setting, owing to their minor status. During their separate trials, each was sentenced to 10 years for assaulting Gwen and an additional 22 years for the murder of 16-year-old Louis. The relatively mild sentences, attributed to their ages, sparked public outrage and the vehement disapproval of the Maguad parents. In pursuit of justice, Cruz and Lavella turned to the media and national officials, advocating for a reassessment of the judicial outcomes. In an emotionally charged interview, Lavella disclosed her willingness to forgive Janice, attributing her heinous actions to her disadvantaged background and lack of opportunities. However, a pivotal moment occurred during a face-to-face encounter with Janice in custody. Lavella looked into the eyes of the girl she had embraced as her own, searching for any sign of repentance or turmoil, but found none. Janice's gaze was void of empathy or regret, filled instead with a chilling detachment and resentment. This revelation compelled Lavella to retract her sentiments of forgiveness, recognizing that the girl they had welcomed as a blessing had, in reality, brought them an unimaginable nightmare. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon.